So we were talking about Hello Divorce, but this is going to be released in January of 2025. And there is always a huge boom for divorce filings. At the beginning of the new year, I think people go through the holidays and they kind of realize, you know what, I would be okay if I don't go through this again. Erin, why do you think that there's such a boom in divorce at the beginning of the year?
I think it's a bit of a combo platter. During the holiday season, not only do a lot of people just have really terrible holidays, they are reminded of everything that's not working in their relationship. But on top of that, the holidays bring with us extra, we feel everything so deeply. So I think that's one piece of it. I think another big piece is the new year, new me. We have put up with a lot throughout the year, and it might not just be about our spouse. It might be how we treat ourselves. And we want to step into a new, better version of ourselves. And then I also think there's a lot of reflecting around the holidays. And what a lot of our clients tell us is that they will never be ready. They will never wake up and feel like, I am so ready for this. It just doesn't usually happen that way. But if you start at the beginning of the year, it feels like this timeline. Like, I can get through it. By this time next year, all goes well, I will be free to a large extent. This year in particular, we're probably going to see a lot more research, whether or not we can expect there to be an overturn of no-fault divorce. And because that is giving people anxiety, I think we're seeing a lot more people who have delayed divorce. They know that divorce is in the cards, but have kind of been putting it off. Now they're starting to think a lot more seriously about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, none of this is legal advice. Erin and I are both attorneys,
right,
licensed in California. However, I think that we should talk to the people. What is no-fault divorce? Why should I be concerned about it? In California, I think for at least the near future, you can rest assured that no-fault divorce is going to be here to stay. But Erin, how would you describe the way that no-fault divorce really works in the real world?
Yeah, great question. These divorce laws that dictate whether or not it's no-fault or a fault-based divorce are state by state. So unlike some of the other massive issues that affect our bodies and our lives that have a federal component to it, for the most part, what we're talking about with no-fault divorce, it's really decided at a state level. So the big difference with no-fault divorce versus fault-based divorce is that if you are in a fault-based divorce state, you have to prove that the other person is at fault before you can even really seek or start the divorce process. And if you are able to get through that initial hurdle after throwing your spouse under the bus, usually in public court, then in some cases, that fault can influence how much support is paid, for how long, and what amount, as well as how property and debts are divided.
Right. So if you think about it, in California, for example, anybody has really a right to get divorced. These days, we have a couple different options you check when you go through your forms, and irreconcilable differences is really all you need to tell the court. And that can be, I like pink, he likes purple, and that's irreconcilable to this couple, and you have a right to get divorced. And there's no burden of proof. There's nothing you have to do. You just check the box, sign a document under penalty of perjury, and you have to jump through other hoops just to get divorced and become a single person again, but you don't actually have to do anything. In some states, for example, you may have to hire a private investigator, show that someone cheated on you, and go through that pain, hiring someone, looking at photos, going to court, litigating, a whole host of issues. And it might be expensive, it might be difficult, and for whatever reason, this next administration, I mean, there's definitely, I think, a religious undertone, but people want it to be more difficult to get divorced, and that is scary. It's potentially going to be really expensive. We have no idea how quickly these changes could occur, if at all. But I do think that for some people listening to this, if you know divorce is in the cards, and because there is a spiritual component to this podcast, I am always encouraging people to look within, get quiet, go on a long walk, meditate, whatever you need to do. You know if divorce is right for you. Live 2025, live your life with intentionality. And if you know that this is something that you need to do, you need to get divorced, you may want to file earlier rather than later while these more flexible laws are still in the books. And I think that's actually a great segue. So let's talk about Hello Divorce, Erin. Full disclosure, I work with the company. I work for Erin's law firm. Her prime product is Hello Divorce. And I would would love to tell the people listening about that.
Awesome. Okay. So first off, the no-fault divorce there's a no-fault divorce option currently in every state. Now, there's also a fault-based divorce option in a couple states. And there's also currently what's called covenant marriage in a few states. So covenant marriage is essentially where you agree that if you were to get divorced at some point down the road, that it would be a fault-based divorce, essentially, that you'd have lots of hoops to jump through before you could get divorced. And the reason why it's so important that we talk about no fault versus fault is because no fault didn't make divorce easy. And that's what I think you're trying to get at here. You're saying, like, you have entered into the world of mediation. You are taking a much more emotional lawyering standpoint, which is healthy and good. And you love the hello divorce model because you know that even in a no-fault divorce system, divorce on average costs $20,000 to $30,000 per person and takes 12, 18 months and sometimes a lot longer. So I think that's something that I definitely want to highlight. And that was, in fact, the reason why I founded Hello Divorce. That, along with one other thing, which is that we had this really expensive divorce process. We had this really contentious, messy, long divorce process that left people in conflict and uncertain for tons of time. But also, we had a process and a system that focuses only on the law. And there is so much more that goes into this massive life transition that we need to and want to set the foundation for a better life ahead. We don't get divorced because we want our life to be worse. We know it's going to be harder before it gets easier, but we also get divorced because we want to truly come alive and live our best lives. And the system talks about the law, and lawyers are amazing. They're a tool, but they aren't the whole picture. There's a lot of bad lawyers out there. There's a lot of bad doctors. There's a lot of bad every professional, but all these big things, they weren't being addressed. And so that's why I sort of pivoted away from everyday practice, which I was the trial lawyer in town, to found Hello Divorce.